It's all too common to hear parents say they refuse to spend any money on their unmotivated kids, especially on college. Unfortunately, skeptics are all too often misclassified as lazy, unmotivated, apathetic. But really what these stuck teens need is an environment that inspires motivation. Many skeptics are simply uninspired by the options that have been presented to them, and they may not be impressed with what they imagine college to be. That's why it's so important for student skeptics to go have a look at the options and move beyond just what they've heard from friends or what they've seen in the media about college. Skeptics need to be presented with new, less conventional, less cookie cutter common options. Introducing them to a college where students only take one class at a time, or where there are no grades, or where Buddhism is the underlying tradition. These are the types of schools that are going to pique the interest of skeptics and make them curious enough to go check them out. Skeptics are really good at identifying BS. They're great critical thinkers, researchers, and decision makers. Recognize these good attributes and use them rather than let them become cynicism. Use your good qualities in skepticism to make meaningful difference. Skeptics need to see it to believe it. They won't just take our word for it. So go out and explore. College visits actually are probably more important for the skeptics than any other student type. But if you can't make it to a college's campus, check out College Real or It's Nacho, which are online websites that will give you a virtual tour of the campus. Also check out Cool Colleges by Don Asher. Skeptics will probably roll their eyes at the title, but it actually has great college recommendations. Along with Colleges That Change Lives, which is a book and a website, again, providing some less conventional, under-the-radar, hidden gem schools that focus more on student success and growth and achievement more than how awesome you are at the time of admission. For the skeptics, I suggest colleges like Deep Springs College on the border of California and Nevada, which is actually a 2-year pre-college option where students work on a student-run ranch and take rich intellectual liberal arts courses in small, informal settings with a few other students and their professors. Or Reed College in Portland, Oregon, where the curriculum is about as old as the university itself, but the students are actually incredibly progressive and open-minded and super quirky. So some of these schools where the options are much different than what students are used to hearing or seeing in the media or on sweatshirts of their friends. So if you work with a skeptic, be patient with them. And if you are a skeptic, be patient with yourself. Explore, get out there, consider options that are off the beaten path, both for college and career. I really love the website Road Trip Nation because it provides students a glimpse into career options that aren't super common or that you don't hear about all the time. And you can find out how those leaders and how those professionals got to where they are today. You find out that there's more than doctor, lawyer, teacher, veterinarian, but you'll also see some of those too. So those are some of my favorite resources, especially to get skeptics opening their minds and looking at really what is out there for them. If you still don't know your student archetype, you should head over to alexellison.com/quiz and take the student archetype quiz. If you are a skeptic, you might come back and watch the recording of this live call. You could also share it with your friends. If you are a different archetype, you might watch the first few that we did. We did a call for achievers, artists, and adventurers. Next week, the live call is for the specialists. So you can get a whole kind of outline of those calls at alexellison.com. So let's get to some of your questions. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. It looks like a couple of these questions came from parents. So my son is such a skeptic, so much so that I really think it is just stubbornness. He won't even consider college because he thinks it's pretentious. Help. Okay, I actually worked with a student a lot like this. This reminds me of a previous student who really thought college was just such a luxury and that he was almost like tougher than that, and he had seen a lot of poverty through his service and his travels and just felt like he was such a privileged kid. And so he really wanted to do like grunt labor, like manual labor. He wanted to find the most grueling sort of jobs that he could find. And I remember having a conversation with him like, So that's awesome as a goal to see sort of what you can withstand and what you can handle. But how is that actually helping anybody, right? So just acknowledging your privilege is an amazing step forward, but it's not helpful if it just makes you feel guilty and it's not, it's not leading you to do anything productive. So recognize your privilege, but then go forward and do something to help people who are less privileged than you. Now, you might not think that a college degree is the way to do that, and that's okay. You might consider some other options. The Deep Springs program I told you about is a 2-year program, which is kind of a pre-college program, but you might not go on to a 4-year college after that. Or one of my favorites is Wayfinding Academy in Oregon, which is sort of a 2-year prep college as well, which just gives you lots of exposure to the world. Perhaps something like that's better for you, or maybe a specific training program or a certificated program where you can go into a very specific niche vocation. Maybe that's how you're going to help. But whatever it is, move forward and think how you can apply your amazing skills as a skeptic and your interests to actually make some sort of dent in the world and some sort of impact. So I find that having that kind of conversation with students who feel that college is pretentious or too prestigious, or that they have this privilege, wow, that was a lot of P's, think about or talk to your student about how they can do something productive rather than just sort of feel guilty and avoid kind of the world because of that view. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea. You're not alone. I've definitely met this kind of student before. And if you are this kind of student and you're listening to this right now, I hope you think differently about kind of how to move forward after recognizing your own privilege. I see a lot of students who do these international service trips where they go maybe build homes or work in an orphanage, and they come home almost feeling very guilty. And that's good for a little bit. Hopefully it inspires action though. So again, forward thinking. Let's look at our next question. My daughter is an interesting kind of skeptic. She doesn't think any college other than an Ivy League is up to snuff. She's skeptical of any college that sends her marketing materials or that she thinks is in any way desperate for applicants. All right, that's a great question, actually. Sometimes we find this with achievers, right? So a lot of achiever types, which was the first call we did, are really unwilling to look at any university option that's not hyper selective or hyper competitive. They want kind of into the club that they are likely not to get into. They kind of like that competition. They like that chase. And they like that risk sometimes. Skeptics, though, can also embody a little bit of that achiever mentality, but it's a little bit more because they really don't trust most things. And so in this particular situation, this girl, for whatever reason, only trusts a handful of hyper-selective universities in the country. That might be because she thinks they have a proven track record of success. Maybe she trusts Harvard because it was founded in the 1600s, so it must be good. For whatever the reason, though, that's an incredibly limiting worldview and might end up leading to her feeling incredibly deflated if she doesn't get into one of those hyper-selective universities. So what I would suggest is doing everything you can to get her excited about some other non-Ivy options. So try to break it down for her. What are the attributes, that characteristics of these Ivy League schools, which are all different, that really resonate with her? Can she list the things that she really genuinely likes? And then I would take that list of attributes and find other schools that sort of have those attributes or those characteristics. So what is it about Princeton that she loves so much? Is it the great science program? Is it the history? Is it the architecture? Is it the location? What are the attributes? Make a list of those things and then see if you can find some overlap schools that have those characteristics, or you can begin to search for schools that have those features. I recommend taking a look at the FISC guide. It'll give you an idea of which schools overlap with a school of interest. It also provides wonderful narrative descriptions of schools. So that's a great resource. But I think getting out there and exploring and really seeing the options is the best way to move forward with this particular skeptic. And I know I've really been stressing for skeptics this idea of college tours, and I realize those can be pricey. But what I tell parents is whenever you are on a family trip, or maybe you're out of town for a soccer tournament, try to just tack on at least 1 or 2 college visits, even if it's a school your child is in no way interested in. It's a great way to start to see what are the attributes that I care about. What are my likes? What are my dislikes? You largely don't know what you don't know until you're introduced to these options. So get on the road, go check out some schools. If you can't make it to a school in person, check out College Reel, It's Nacho for these virtual college tours. So hopefully that will help this student, and hopefully for those of you who identify with this student, will help you open your mind a little bit more to the options and not be so skeptical about non-Ivy schools. I will say, though, that schools that market really, really intensely, I tend to be a little skeptical of those schools as well. Generally, I'm skeptical of for-profit schools just because their track record has been proven to not be great. The statistics are not great for the for-profit universities on the whole in the United States. So that would be skepticism that's sort of rooted in some fact. So that kind of research is important to do as well. All right, let's see what our next question is. My quiz results said I'm a skeptic, which I didn't initially believe, which I guess proves that I really am a skeptic. For a while now, I just thought I was uninterested in college. I've been called lazy, and my parents tell me I don't care about my future. So I started to believe that and play that role. But the truth is, I really do want to care, but I haven't found anything in my future worth caring about. This is a wonderful kind of question, but also testimony from a student. I really appreciate that vulnerability. This is really common, right? This kind of labeling that we then sort of embody. And this happens all the time, whether you're labeled as a mess up or a smart kid or an F student or an A student. These labels can really start to impact how we show up in the world. And so for starters, for the parents out there, I just really encourage you to avoid those kinds of labels rather than calling your student lazy or unmotivated. Recognize that they might be feeling lazy and unmotivated in that moment, but that doesn't define who they are and who they could become. Also, I would say for the student, try to separate your past actions from your future potential, right? So just because you haven't felt motivated in the past, I would encourage you to embody a sense of optimism about what you could be in the future. Think about what is not inspiring in your current environment, and think about if you could paint the ideal world for yourself or the ideal college world for yourself, what would that look like? What would that world look like for you? And what would that experience look like? Try to sort of write that out or draw that out. And usually I have students, when I have students do this, they can find an environment that actually fits that. They might think it's totally pie in the sky, but 9 times out of 10, there is a school that fits what you have dreamt up. We have over 4,000 schools to choose from in this country alone, and obviously international options are open to you as well. So if you can dream it, it probably does exist. I tell students the same thing with careers. If you can make up a career, it probably actually exists. Road Trip Nation, that website I referred to earlier, does this a lot with students. It's a really fun little experiment. So try to paint a picture of what your ideal would look like. What would this environment look like that really motivated and inspired you? And how can you and maybe your parents help to create that for you? And then begin your college search with that kind of renewed optimism. Don't assume anything about college. Typically, the colleges that you hear about all the time do have a lot in common. They're hyper selective. They attract very competitive students. And if that's not your jam, I could see how you would just write off the whole thing and throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I encourage you not to do that. I encourage you to be brave and look beyond what you are seeing in the headlines all the time, and the schools, look beyond the schools your friends are talking about all the time, and look for those hidden gems. And again, some of those hidden gems are in the resources I mentioned earlier, such as Colleges That Change Lives and Cool Colleges, the book by Don Asher. So check out some of those resources to really go on a hunt and find some of these hidden gems. I think that will inspire you and hopefully give you that burst of energy to then move forward and start to find an awesome next step on your path. I also would encourage you to do a couple of different assessments to try to get an objective view of yourself. You might be feeling down on yourself right now, and so your judgment of yourself might be a bit clouded. So I know you've taken the student archetype quiz, but I'm also a fan of uscience.com. This is an online assessment you can take. It takes about an hour and a half. You can kind of go at your own pace. It's a series of little brain games that give you a full aptitude and interest assessment as well as career recommendations. I've definitely worked with a number of students before who were quite down on themselves and down on their prospects. And after taking this assessment, they sort of had this renewed energy and optimism because it was a bit of an objective assessment, and I think that's really important. So those are all the questions we have time for today. I hope you got your questions answered. Even if you didn't submit a question, I hope we touched on something you were thinking in the back of your mind. I hope you'll join me next Friday for the call with the specialists. And then you can also view the recordings at my YouTube channel, and you can sign up for future calls and see the whole schedule for upcoming calls at alexellison.com. It's been a total joy doing these. I'm really, really having fun. So I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much and have a great evening.